welcome to the UFC to middleweight finisher, the Reaper. It's SD Sedriques Dumas taking on Josh Fremd, the collegiate wrestler, and I'll get into his wrestling pedigree, though you might not see him on D1 posters. He's not Bo Nickel. He did go far with it. When you look at this matchup, Matt, it was announced on February 23rd by Team Iridium that out was Abu Zaitsar, in is Josh Fremd, the former LFA middleweight title challenger, and he didn't win that belt against Gregory Rodriguez, but he did win some big fights after that. He picked up a big win over Joel Bauman, who came out throwing everything in the kitchen sink in that fight. You do have Fremd going out there, getting the submission win about a year ago, and that was at the start of 2022. So Fremd looking for his first win in about a year. He lost in the UFC to Fluffy Hernandez, got kind of out-wrestled in that matchup. His last time out, he nearly had his head popped off like a daisy against Trayshawn Gorin, one of the most disgusting submissions you'll ever see. And now for Fremd, he was 9-3 going into the fight against Gore, who was 3-2. And now Fremd has to take on another up-and-comer in Dumas, who's undefeated. And it is a tricky one, because for Dumas, over on Contender Series, take on Mateus Peñas, and that was a weird fight because Peñas, 23-3 as a kickboxer, he had all the knockout wins. Peñas was slightly favored to win the fight. I thought Peñas was going to win the fight. And Dumas went out there and put it on him and looked amazing. He really did show his complete arsenal, because for Dumas, what's he good at? His striking's good. Offensively. It's good defensively. His wrestling's good offensively. His submission ability's good offensively. His wrestling defense isn't the best, but for Dumas, he's good at getting out of bad positions. He shows a lot of heart and toughness in these fights. And I don't know where his ceiling is in the UFC, but it doesn't matter, because now he gets to go on against a tough enough test in Josh Fremd. We saw Fremd go out there, finish Bruno Oliveira in that 4-man tournament with the LFA to then book his shot against Gregory Rodriguez, and that was a string of 3 straight main events with the LFA. It was Oliveira, it was Rodriguez, and then it was Renato Valente, and a win there too for Fremd. So a big matchup for both of these guys, a reset for Fremd, a litmus test for Dumas, and that's what makes it fun in a middleweight division that's kind of all over the place these days.
It really is. That's the weird thing about the middleweight division. We can applaud divisions like the lightweight and the bantamweight division for being deep, basically down to their top 25, really 45 if we want to be honest. But the middleweight division doesn't really have that luxury. We were kind of joking last weekend on our Fight Companion about, hey, it's kind of wild how if Bo Nickel were to fight Alex Pereira, I asked you what the odds would be. You said, Pereira would be like, a minus 165, 170? Isn't that wild that a guy making his UFC debut could have reasonable odds against the champion? And yes, I understand that there's a lot of specialists in this division, and that's what makes for so much fun, but I see this fight being very similar to what probably a Bo Nickel versus Alex Pereira fight would be. Can you get oil and water to mix? Yes, you can emulsify stuff if you spin it fast enough. I love to cook, so I do know that. But for the most part, no, it's impossible. One is going to stay on top of the other. And this really is one of those water and oil fights. Because for Dumas, Caesars don't fear the Reaper. He is very dangerous on the feet, and I love the hand speed that he shows at this division too, because he doesn't just have to load up on that one big shot to get the knockout win. He can put combinations together, mix his shots together, and he does what Dan Hardy always says. I'm going to give him his flowers every time I bring this up. He doesn't have to choose which punch he puts his power on in his combinations. He can make it the jab, he can make it the second punch, he can make it the fourth punch. It's very high level striking what Dumas is able to demonstrate inside the cage, but you brought it up. What does he struggle with? So far, the takedown defense has been a bit of a struggle for him, and I do wonder about how much time Josh Fremd is going to be able to get just holding Dumas against the cage, because I know that's not something that we want to talk about. It's not something that's going to make for an exciting fight, but Fremd, I do think, is going to have an advantage with the wrestling to the point where it might kind of cancel itself out, and it might make for a bit of a stale viewing.
Well, we'll throw in a little bit of a clip from our Contender Series fight from last summer, talking about Dumas in that matchup with Peñas, because I think it does hold a lot of water in this one.
And for his opponent, SD Dumas, man, this guy blows people away. His striking's great. And the thing that I like, he can strike off the back foot. He can strike moving forward. He can strike moving sideways. He has so many different attacks. His kicks are great. I think his kicks one of the best parts of his game. And for SD Dumas, see, I do a lot of research for the show differently than I do for our, our full card UFC breakdown. So I do a lot more like reading articles, watching certain interviews. And for this one, I found an article on the UFC.com website. And the headline of this one, Matt, I said I was gonna talk about this, but I didn't tell you what it was. The headline is Sedriques Dumas, Time is Now, Dana White's Contender Series. This is by Walker Van Way. And you go down about 3 or 4 paragraphs With the laid-back personality of a post-show Redman, the flash of Sean O'Malley, the thirst for blood of Robbie Lawler, and the power of a small vehicle, Dumas really doesn't have much adrenaline left for outside the cage. What? Like, is this guy hanging out with Redman post-show? Is this Walker Van Way? Does he know Redman?
Imagine just being like, this guy's pretty great at everything. And him reading that article being like, I guess. Like,
I better put spinners on my car and drive real slow now.
Now, when it does come down to it, like, you look at Dumas, all those pluses, the one slight negative, but you haven't seen it cause any issues. I guess the only other thing you could say was level competition coming into the UFC and Contender Series. When he was 6-0 taking on Peñas, it was over guys' combined record of 18-22, so not the greatest level of competition. He had fights with Icon FC, Gamebred, so Jorge Masvidal guy. He's out of Pensacola, Florida. You heard it on Contender Series, kind of a crazy life story. Dana White liked that when he signed him. But if you do look at it for Fremd, he wrestled at Slippery Rock University. And I went and I looked and I thought, okay, Slippery Rock University, I hadn't heard of it because Fremd is a Pennsylvania guy. That was where Stanley Sedriques, that's his alma mater. That was an Olympian right there. So Sedriques really putting the world on notice back in the 70s. Fremd out of that gym.
I knew that.
Part of the MMA team, a part of the wrestling team. And for Fremd, positive record, big fights on his record. And if you look at it, some decent blitzes in some of these fights. And he's able to withstand some of the blitzes. I know in the biggest fights he hasn't, but out of the Bauman fight, he was able to do it. And so on and so forth. So we have a look at the odds. Dumas is the slight favorite. Fremd, the slight underdog. The reset fight, Fremd took this one on short notice on February 23rd. We have a look at the Topology votes. Matt, surprised us there to you. Dumas, polarizing figure.
He is.
Very polarizing on the internet. I feel like the fans have him here, though. I'm going to say over under 70% Dumas.
I think it'll be over.
And it's way over. So 451 total votes, 91% Dumas, 71% by knockout. And for the 9% that have Fremd, 41% by decision, 31% by knockout. 91% on Dumas, and a lot by knockout.
I don't have that much on the Reaper, but I still think he's going to win this match. The problem with Fremd is he does leave himself open when he goes for some of his takedown attempts, and he leaves himself wide open for some of the uppercuts and knees from a guy like Dumas, and that's why I do favor him in this matchup. Now, again, I kind of mentioned it during the video. I could see Fremd going for a lot of some of those stalling techniques up against the cage because he does realize how dangerous of a fight this is going to be at range, but again, I do think at range he is going to eat some of those big damaging shots, and for that reason, I do have Dumas.
Yeah, and if you look at it for Josh Fremd, he's a little bit like Tim Duncan in his strikes. He doesn't go for the kill too much.
The greatest of all time?
He will be kind of like the big fundamental. He'll pop the jab out there. He'll throw the jab out enough that it then opens up his right hand. Threat of the takedown, clinch game, like a lot of fundamentals that you like to see out of Factory X Muay Thai. And Fremd's a guy that grew up, came up on that East Coast scene. Both guys really East Coast guys, but different parts of the East Coast. For Dumas, I like the power. I like the offensive grappling in a matchup like this. I like the size that he has for the division, even though, again, height-wise, they're pretty close, 2 inches in height to Fremd. A little bit of a reach advantage either way, but I do like Dumas in the matchup. So both of us going with the Reaper, Sedriques Dumas in the matchup. Should be a fun one. Let us know down below in the comment section who you have in the fight. Some big-time ones left on this card, including Jan and Dvalishvili in that main event. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.